4 tips to getting a supply chain job, getting your supply chain career on the right track. That's what we're going to be talking about this week. So why are we talking about this topic this week? Sort of how to get a supply chain job, how to get your supply chain career on the right track, because it's the most common question I get asked here on YouTube as well as on our Logistics Bureau blog. And we have a few videos on this topic already, and I'll put links to those down below. But I just want to look at it from a slightly different angle. Who was it wrote that book, Begin with the End in Mind? Comment down below if you can remember the author, because I'd really like you to think about that, whether you're sort of mid-career or in the early part of your supply chain career. Where do you see it all heading? Because that's really important. You know, before you step on that first rung of the ladder, you need to have an idea of which window you've got your ladder up against. You know, are you actually climbing the right ladder? So exactly what do I mean by that? In fact, look, I'll put a link to a video where I did an interview with a good friend of mine, Mark Powell. Mark had an outstanding supply chain career and ended up as the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar retailer. And what's really interesting, and he talks about it in the interview, is that he mapped out his career, you know, step by step. I need this kind of job, I need that kind of job. So you really ought to start thinking about that as well. And think about the types of roles. So think about the end game. You know, do I want to be a CEO? Do I want to be a supply chain director? Do I want to be a logistics manager? You know, whatever level in the organization you'd like to be. And then think about the sort of roles that you would like to do. So there can be operational type roles, you know, managing warehouses and transport fleets. There can be technical roles, developing supply chain solutions in terms of, you know, IT and automation and robotics. You know, if you're into numbers and analysis, there's all sorts of great roles around forecasting, demand planning, sales and operations planning, the accounting elements of supply chain. So do, you know, really think hard about the types of work that you like to do, because there's almost any type of work that you want within supply chain, and it's much better to get on a career path of doing things that you really enjoy. You know, I would hate for you to be 10, 20 years into the future and thinking, oh, you know, I wish I hadn't got into this, so I'm really not enjoying it too much. So have a good think about the stuff that you enjoy doing, the stuff that you would enjoy studying more, because there's nothing worse than trying to study something you're not interested in. So there we go. Have a look at number 1. Think about the end game, the sort of roles that you might want to get into, and therefore, you know, how you're going to plan that out step by step. Number 2 then is the qualifications needed. Now, depending on the types of roles that you want to get into in supply chain, it could be, you know, very operational, working in a warehouse where, you know, maybe if you're starting off at the bottom level there, really you don't need any qualifications. You can sort of build up gradually. The more senior you're going to be in an organization, generally speaking, the greater requirement for formal qualifications, because you're going to be managing, you know, a much larger operation, more people, budgets, that kind of thing. And as you do rise through an organization, you're obviously going to need, you know, formal qualifications behind you to enable you to do that. So again, thinking of roles, think about the sort of qualifications that might be needed. Look, it's not always about university degrees. Certainly for the very senior roles, you're going to be looking at master's degrees. For intermediate roles, generally it's going to be bachelor degrees. But, you know, there's a lot of management roles where, you know, certificate courses, short courses and things like that might suffice as well. So do have a look at the sorts of opportunities there are for further education and training, and how that's going to fit with your career plan. Number 3 that I would ask you to think about is the industry. So again, think about where your interests lie. You know, do you want to get into shipping and that element of the supply chain? Things like, you know, more heavy industry, mining, industrial, you know, that's absolutely fascinating. Do you want to get into fast-moving consumer goods, retail? So again, that's helping you decide on the sort of focus and the type of career path that you really ought to be looking at. So think about the industries that interest you. And then number 4, how do you get that first job? And I keep talking about this online. I reckon the most powerful tool to get that first job, to get that first foot on the rung of the career ladder, is networking. And this networking takes all forms. You know, these days it's online, you know, network with people on LinkedIn. I spend way too much time on LinkedIn chatting to people about their supply chain careers. But please don't 100 of you jump on with questions. You know, so network online. Physical networking is much more effective. You know, depending what part of the world you're in, you may be able to do that now. Getting along to industry associations, industry events. It is such a powerful thing because it helps you keep up to date with what's going on in the industry. You're starting to meet the movers and shakers in the industry. And look, generally people who are very successful in an industry don't mind giving advice and giving a leg up to those who are just starting out. You know, it kind of makes them feel pretty good, to be honest, to be helping people new to the industry. So don't be shy about, you know, reaching out and talking to people at networking events. And, you know, if you're going through that whole phase of job applications and things, I know that can be extremely tedious and it can get very disappointing at times. You've just got to keep going. You know, to a certain degree, it's a numbers game. You've just got to keep pumping out those applications. So there we go. 4 things to think about. What's your end game? What's your career path going to look like? Number 2, what sort of qualifications do you think you're going to have to get? Number 3, what's the industry of interest? And number 4, get out and network and start connecting with people. Now, you may have lots of questions. I'm happy to answer questions down below this video, but I get lots of questions about, you know, how do I get a job in Canada? How do I get a job in Australia? A lot of that, the difficulty is around working visas and things like that. And I'm not an immigration agent, so I really can't help you with that. That's probably something that you need to get professional advice on. And likewise, you know, a lot of people sort of say to me, which university, you know, where did you go? What's the best university to go to? That's a constantly changing feast. All I would suggest is, you know, do some Google research at any one time. You know, the rankings of different universities and so on are changing, their courses are changing. There are hundreds of university courses for supply chain around the world, outstanding ones. So, you know, look for feedback and look for the course content and things like that that might interest you. So by all means, ask questions down below. Let me give you access to some more resources as well. So I'm going to put a link to a playlist down below, which is all about sort of job hunting. You'll find the interview with Mark Powell on there, which is a really good video to watch. I'll put a link down below also to Logistics Bureau blogs. That's my consulting business, and we have a very active blog on there, so there's lots of articles and stuff. And if you look, I hate pitching things on this channel, but this actually might be useful for you. I actually have an online supply chain education program, funnily enough, called Supply Chain Secrets, and people reckon it's pretty good. So I'll put a link to that as well. It's ridiculously inexpensive. So that's another way that you can help build your knowledge and start to build your career as well. Okay, so that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. We are very close this week to a milestone, 55,000 subscribers. By the time you're watching this, we may have reached it. If you know me and you know this channel, we tend to celebrate these things, so watch out for the next video. There'll be a bit of a celebration. Bye for now. See you next week.